I'm hoping you can. I've just got a time lag. Yes. Right. To what I was saying, welcome. Thank you to all of the people that have come in and watching now. Just beforehand, I was watching the concurrent viewers and there weren't any. And I was slightly concerned about that. But you're all here and that's wonderful. Quick message to people that come to watch this later on. If you want to go straight to the story, look in the description or along the search bar. It will be bookmarked as soon after finishing as Google allows me to, which can actually take a day or two. So the next 5-10 minutes is me talking to chat, engaging. Feel free to listen to work out what the start of the story actually is, and then we can get on with it. That said, that's okay, we're just getting started, you're not really late. I've been given 2 suggestions so far for the story. One is a continuation of last time, and my personal thoughts with that are to keep the world going, keep what happened at the end of that linked, but not actually directly follow on with it, especially as the main character is now sat in Arkham, rocking and trying to fire a gun with nothing in his hand. The other idea was a car breaking down in front of an old, terrifying mansion. And I did hear the sound of the time warp going on in the back of my head when I read that one. Has anyone got any other ideas for where we start? Hi, Fred. I'm going to keep talking because otherwise, actually, if I try and talk to you and wait for an answer, there's going to be a very, very gappy situation. So one thing to go to as far as links from last time is when you're giving me suggestions, don't give me suggestions for what's about to happen, because I will read it at best 10 seconds after the fact. So if it's not at least 10 seconds in the future, it's not going to help. And mansion full of heretics, I believe that's usually called a parliament building. Moving on from that, so give me ideas as to, I didn't get to that, I forgot to go and look at that Discord, sorry Fred. If you can, oh, Cynthia's on it for me. So yeah, give me ideas of where we can go 2 or 3 minutes on from where we are in the story. That gives me enough time to read what you're saying, register what you're saying, and work out how I can tie it in to the story while talking. So my brain is desperately trying to multitask, and hey, I'm a guy, we don't do that. Ooh. Oh, Cynthia just said that. I love the idea. I think I might have to put some thought into it. We're on very similar ideas there. Now that's just cruel. Doable, but cruel. So, a wolf armed with a chainsaw riding a bear. I will see if I can stick that in somewhere, but it's unlikely to be the bulk of the story. My wife is suggesting that, again, I run with what's going on with the barrels. She just likes the idea of the names of the characters involved. Just quickly skipping through chat and quickly checking the time. So we've got another 2 or 3 minutes to see if anyone's got any other ideas for the might go with the same world. So okay, the barrels might be a sideline. If we're heading for 1920s, I'm not certain they had roller skates. My beautiful assistant is checking for me. Okay, we may have had roller skates in that period, so it might be workable. So my wife, Cynthia, who's in chat, suddenly read the rest of it and realised why she was looking for roller skates. Time check, couple more minutes. My aim is to start the story at about 10 past if I seem to be. So you've got another minute or so. If anyone has any amazing ideas, and they may not be the heretics you're looking for, Legion of the Damned, but I think we can get heretics in there. In fact, any Cthulhu cultist would pretty much qualify. And in your terms, they're probably followers of Slaanesh. Oh. Get another drink before I get started. So I'll stick in something rough to start us off on the barrels. Keep this one going, Tootie. I might actually write a separate story for this one, because trying to get a detective wolf armed with a chainsaw riding a bear while wearing roller skates might be a bit much for me to do on the spot. Okay, a bear in power armor with probably a chain fist in that case, trying to purge heretics. My brain is about to leak out of my ears. So let's switch over to the swirly. Joel was a truck driver. He did not know why he took this job. A beautiful young lady, blonde, had offered it to him. The money was bad, but she was attractive. But there was something odd, something eerie about her. The coat she wore seemed more like a cloak. It had a hood at the back. And she didn't tell him much about the barrels he was collecting. He loaded up the barrels with help. They were heavy. They smelt. They had the kind of fishy smell that came from rotten fish, an old, disused seaport. He wanted them taken quite away into a secluded warehouse in the town. The smell had got into his head. It was twisting his mind. All he could think of was fish and fish people. He couldn't forget the barrels. He was getting distracted as he drove. It was night and it was dark. and he bumped a couple of times against the curb as he weaved his way through Arkham, down towards the docks, and out and into... That one caught me. I've had Storstroming, but yes, you've got the smell. So, and down into the warehouses. He pulled up. All of the street lights around the warehouse were out. As he got there, two people in similar coats but with hoods up covering their faces opened the door with the whirring round as they pulled the chain on the shutters to take it up to the roof. He drove the wagon in and stopped. There was a nod, and several of the strange, almost misshapen people came with amazing strength and hefted the barrels, taking them off the back of the wagon, moving them and setting them down. All the time, the smell grew. One of the caps seemed to pop off. There was something floating, but the driver had enough sense. Joel was not looking too closely. Gradually, they moved them. He reversed out and drove home into the night. All that night, his sleep was twisted. He dreamt of vast underwater cities with strange pillars covered in unusual, unreadable text that seemed to squirm in front of the eyes. There were pictures carved in of strange squid-like beings with wings. And as he moved through, the doors were heavy and sealed, but in the distance he could hear a faint, deep breathing, despite the fact it was all under a dark, murky water. Gradually, he felt himself being pulled and sucked in towards one of the rooms. He went through the door, desperately trying to catch the frame to prevent himself as he was pulled in. As he floated, he saw different forms, floating, fish-like creatures, fishmen, in the waters beside him, reaching out to him. As he flinched away, there were creatures indescribable that pulled at his mind, screaming and singing, his head twisting, his brain hurting as he tried to contend with angles that shouldn't exist. He moved through, going through different doors. Most of the heavy doors were sealed, yet behind them he could feel the power and sense the age of the walls as they covered round him. Gradually, he was pulled deeper and deeper, up through the city, towards a huge building at the top. Suddenly, he woke sharply, with one word, Vertagen, floating in the back of his head, not sure how to spell or how to pronounce it. He was covered in sweat, got up, took himself down, and went for another day driving the wagon. The day was uneventful, but constantly in the back of his mind was the word Vertagen, joined with something else he thought he'd heard. Cthulhu, Vertagen. He knew neither what of these meant, but still continued, wondering where it had come from and if it was linked to those strange barrels he'd shifted the night before. Each night for the next several days, he had similar dreams where he was floating through the city. He got no decent sleep and was getting more and more tired. So he decided he needed to know what was in the barrels. Shaking himself, it had been a hard day, but that evening he headed up and crept down to the warehouses. He could see the one where he'd driven into, where there were people still at the front, but he could see round the side was an old, rusted fire escape. Moving down through the dark, not wanting to be seen, these people had given him the creeps the first time, and something felt deeply wrong about the place. He crept and crawled up, pulling himself up onto the fire escape, and across the top of the warehouse there was a row of windows, one of them open. It was a narrow ledge, but he carefully edged himself against it. Edged himself against it. That's better. And peeked through the window. As he peeked in, the room was dark. It was only lit with oil lamps. He could see a number of boxes. And then, in the centre of the room, was a large pentagram with weird figures. The pentagram was off-edged, and there seemed to be something shaped like an eye in the centre of it. He moved closer, pulling himself in, trying to hear what was being said, as strange black candles were placed at the points of the pentagrams. A strange chanting came as a group of the black cowled creatures moved in, carrying a barrel, and the others pulling a strange person, dragging them towards it. They moved the barrel and set it in the middle of the pentagram, all chanting. The lid was taken off. There were screams heard in the background, the kind of noises that when you hear, you can never forget. Slurping and slashing, the sound of skin being pulled. The person being dragged in, well, he couldn't tell whether it was male or female, was shaking, pulling and fighting. As they fought, they knocked one of the cultists who stumbled, their cowl coming back to reveal the blonde that had originally recruited for him. The person was moved into the centre, besides the barrel, hands held, as strange symbols were tattooed, despite the screams, onto the body. The look of fear in what was now obviously a young man's face was huge, agony contorted. As they drew, trickles of blood seems to come out of the ears. And then they lifted. Still fighting, some of the water sloshed out of the barrel. And he was pushed and forced down. And the lid put on over the top and nailed in place, while his screams became a gurgle. The cultists moved out, taking positions on the pentagrams, and then stood and started chanting. Cthulhu, Fatagan, Cthulhu, Fatagan, were the only words he could make sense of between the guttural language used as they went through. The barrel started rocking. There were screams and shouts and noises of splitting as the barrel was pushed wide as though something was trying to escape. Joel, the driver, opened his eyes wide as the lid, with its nails held in place, was slowly pushed up off the barrel and off to one side. Erupting from the space was no longer the young man that had been in there, but a strange fist-like creature with webbed fingers, large teeth, bulbous eyes, something completely unnatural, but that tied to the creatures he'd seen in his dream. He shrieked, and faces turned towards him. Pulling away, slipping on the ledge, he just caught himself as he moved himself gradually along to get back to the fire escape, running, tripping, falling against the metal, hearing the noise of the shutters opening at the front as the cultists were coming. He hit the ground, twisting his ankle, and started running. He had several streets to reach the truck. He hadn't wanted it to be seen. He heard a strange flapping of webbed feet on the ground behind him as he ran. Turning corner and corner, he got to the van, opened the door, and then put in the key. It didn't start. He could hear people coming behind him again, turned again. Finally, as it cranked over, he saw the strange fist creature turning round in the rearview mirror. He put his foot to the floor, and gradually the truck started moving, pushing forward. The creature running, reaching to catch it, but he gained just enough momentum that it slipped through the creature's fingers, and he headed into the night. He got home, parked up, panting. He had no energy left. He was sore. He was broken. He crawled up into his bed and fell into a fitful sleep. All he could hear all night was Cthulhu, Fatagan, Cthulhu, Fatagan, as he saw these creatures swimming around the city, reaching out to him, trying to pull him towards a barrel. He woke up sweating. The sun was just starting to come up. He got up, splashed his face. There was no work for him today. He did not know what he had found, but he needed to find out, he needed help, and he needed to stop it. No, Legion, that's my wife. He completely unhinged the reader, headed in. He knew of a detective who might help, who looked into the strange, the unusual. He headed up and knocked on the door. The legend across the front saying, Armstrong, detective. Sorry, peanut gallery in the background. He opened the door and Jonathan Armstrong was sat there. They'd gone to school together. They didn't know each other well, but he knew that this was his man. Armstrong had unusual tastes. There was a strange painting on the wall showing a picture of a giant bear on all fours with a wolf man sat on it, holding what appeared to be one of the newer type chainsaws, with something strange on his feet he didn't recognize, but looked like wheels. This avant-garde art wasn't his thing, so he didn't look long. He went up and sat down. Armstrong asked what he wanted, and he told him his story. Armstrong shook his head, pulling a face. "This is serious," he said. "There are strange things that people oughtn't see and oughtn't know, and that's one of them. I can help you within this, but know your life is at risk, as is your sanity." He looked startled as Armstrong began to explain cases he'd encountered before. One case of a missing information broker who just disappeared one day along with a large number of other people. Shaking his head, they decided that that night they needed to go back. This time they were going prepared. He had his gun and suggested that Joel get his own. Joel had never shot, but he knew a man. He got himself a pump-action shotgun. He was told that you didn't need to be good to use one, with the end sawn close. He went back to Armstrong's. Armstrong had been out. They got maps of the warehouse district, and he'd gone and found all sorts of papers. The warehouse had a strange history, and people had been going missing around the local area. There were strange sounds that came from the waters near there, and cargoes had just disappeared. No one knew how. They waited till night, not able to find the owner, not able to find details, or to find out more about the mysterious Kate. Armstrong made several petrol bombs, just in case, and they carried 2 each with a Zippo lighter, just in case. dark fell, and rather than taking the truck which had been seen before, they took the car. Again, parking not quite so far away. They may need to make a fast getaway, and facing away so that they were in the right direction to leave. Leaving the car, they crept in. Looking at the fire escape, it had been totaled. The bottom couple of levels had been ripped down, preventing them using that route. But there was a side door. They crept up, and Armstrong got out some lockpicks. The door opened, and they crept in. It was dark again. There was low moaning. The fishy smell was awful. They looked, and they could see canned fish food and canned fish. One with a sign saying Storstroming along the side. Knowing people of a Swedish background, Joel knew what it was and thought they could be using that to try and cover what the truth was behind the smell. They crept in through the door, with a slight click as they closed it behind them. Their shadows flickered in the oil lamps and candles, and they moved in. In front, Joel was holding his gun tightly, and Armstrong had his pistol. Get them the right way round. As they moved through, they heard a cry and a scream, and the chanting began. As they moved through and could see past the crates, a woman was being dragged forcefully towards them. Armstrong, without thinking, started shooting. Two of the cultists were hit and went down. Two others took cover and started chanting. Suddenly, something blue fizzled through the air by them, and the shadows seemed to coalesce round it, pulling them towards it. At that, Joel dived to one side, hiding, terrified, rocking. He heard gunshots in the distance. He heard the scream of the woman as she was hit. Several of the oil lamps went out. There were two loud splashes and then bursts of flames as Armstrong used his firebombs. All Joel could do was sit and rock, the words going through his head. Cthulhu, Vertagen, Cthulhu, Vertagen, Cthulhu, Vertagen. The battle seemed to rage on for eons until he heard a cry and gurgle that sounded horribly like it might be Armstrong. The fires started to die down with a whoosh of water, though he knew not how it got there, and it went dark. He felt a hand on his shoulder. Next thing he knew, he was being dragged, pulled through into the centre of the room. The candles around the pentagrams were being relit. There was a lid off a barrel in the middle. He was pulled towards it with his last ever memories being pushed down and the barrel being nailed closed over his head. How was that? I did see some stuff going through chat. I need to find a way to work that so what I see are just story suggestions, because it was getting very, very distracting, especially the story of the bear. So I'm reading you creating the story of the bear while I'm trying to keep my mind on writing another story. My brain hurt. Actually, it wasn't coming until you suggested it. As I said, the more you put in, the more I can tweak it to what you put. The more you put enables me and actually takes some of the pressure off me to make up quite as much of what's going on the spot as I am doing, though it's fun. And yes, it was fun trying to get the bear in. You can either, when I finish this, you'll be able to go back to the beginning, Sten. The other thing I'm doing, which I did with the last one, is I will bookmark it. So if you come back to it in a day or so's time, you'd be able to come straight in at the story. And that's what I'm going to do with each one of these, so that my pleasure. It was a challenge. Trying to fit that into a horror story. So next week I'm probably going to look at trying to start the short Thursday ones, and I might try and do some longer Sunday ones, but they'll start earlier, so they'll still finish about the same time but start earlier in the evening so people can drop in and out. It's not a case of everyone needs to be there all the way through it. Though I am very chuffed that 7 concurrent views and 15 views so far on this is bringing a smile to my face. So certainly we're going to keep this going. It's just a case of tidying it up to make the storytelling slightly easier for me, but that's a technology thing I need to work on. Fred, yes, I'll drop into Discord chat. There hadn't been much in there that I hadn't been. Everybody else, if you're interested in joining the Discord, I added an email address to the YouTube account, which is caveofcreation@gmail.com. This was partially a continuation of the first story, Sten. The barrel that Joel went into was one of the barrels from the original story, but I'm quite happy to add to it. We even had a brief visitation from Kate. So, if you've got that, do come email me any Discord details you've got at that email address, and I will add you to the Discord. In the long run, it will be a Patreon thing, but the people that are being added now will get lifetime access without that. That's not saying I wouldn't be happy if you take Patreon, but you will keep the Discord access. It's not something that's going to go away. There's lots of places it could go. So yeah, just shoot me an email, because one of the ideas is if we've got more action in Discord, only a little, you get rid of it quickly. But then we can be talking about this and putting plans together to start the story. And then the more input you put in during the story, especially if I can find a way to moderate it, I can work within the things you put in. Now, part of my moderation is going to be Cynthia, but it's finding a way to get that to me in a way I can see easily without me having to lose chat to do so. So I'm going to think about how I make that work in the next week. I'm loving reading what's going on in chat. It's great. I'm really liking the community we are starting to build, which is why I like the idea of getting into something like Discord where we can continue this kind of conversation. Now I'm going to say my usual, which I should have said at the start, but I forgot. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and comment. Liking and comment really helps the channel and the streams get out there. Every comment is worth a huge number of likes, and that's how Google makes the algorithm work. So anything you can do would be grateful. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming and getting involved in chat. The offer for people to just be able to join Discord only runs to the 31st of October. If you're watching this really, really late, 2024. And I would love to see you there. Not least of which, I spend all day at home working on this stuff on my own. So if people are in the Discord, it gives me conversations to have during the day. And I will be paying attention to the Discord as soon as it starts getting a number of people in it. At the moment, it's 4, and 2 of those are me and my wife. It should have been added to the account. It's Cave of Creation, all one word, at gmail.com. Cave of Chronicles, sorry. Wrong YouTube account. Cave of Chronicles at gmail.com. And that will get you that's the one. Thank you, sweetheart. And I will see you all soon. There is the premiere of The Curse of Yig coming out at 8 o'clock tomorrow. Yesterday we had the complete full-length version of The Horror at Red Hook come out. So if you're looking for any of the standard videos, go and watch those. And I honestly can say it has been a pleasure. Thank you all. See you soon. And I need to remember to put an end of video image in.